The question I have for you in the similar vein was how did obsession drive you?
Yeah, and I think that, he planted the seeds in us by taking us out skiing. And I think initially when people get exposed to certain activities, I don't necessarily think you just fall into passion. We loved skiing. And we often laugh that, starting in about middle school, 5th grade, my brother, I have a twin brother, identical twin brother, who's also my climbing partner. And then I have an older brother. And from the time that we entered middle school until we got through, basically college, if there was a moment where we didn't have school, we were on that ski hill. So we're developing this love of this activity called skiing. And that started because of Dad. And then, we got through high school and we carried on with our lives. We had developed this passion to get into the backcountry at age 12. Dad was responsible, and he loaded us up in the car, and he took us to a local mountain where there were no lifts or anything in the middle of summer. And I remember we were at dinner. It was actually July 3rd, and the slope that he wanted to take us to actually had a name called July 4th because it was off of a 13,000-foot peak, and it was a place where a few people would go and get the last turns of the season skiing in the summer. The lifts close in April. And so he said, load up the station wagon, we're going skiing. So we're looking at him, we're playing baseball and, messing around in the 80-degree sun. It's like, Dad's losing his mind. But we did it. And he took us up there, and that's where the seeds were planted for what would ultimately become my passion. Then we turned 16. Dad helped us fix up an old Willys Jeep, a 1948 Willys Jeep. And from the time the lifts closed until they opened, we were using that Jeep to access peaks and to ski, on our own. And that carried forward. And then after college, we all migrated back to Aspen. And we picked up that love of backcountry skiing again. And by this time, we all had jobs, had a little bit of money to afford doing some more exotic things. So we decided to go up into the Pacific Northwest on peaks like Rainier and some of the volcanoes up there. We slowly started to realize that we had a knack for this stuff. We were very good endurance athletes, and one thing led to another. Before we knew it, we found ourselves spending springs up in Alaska and Canada in the coastal range, which were just they're the most beastly peaks in the world because you've got horrendous weather. And we realized that we had a unique ability to excel at survival, if nothing else. We got a little taste of altitude on Denali, which is 20,000 feet. And then the next step was we started heading into the 6,000, 20,000 foot peak, 6,000 meters, 20,000 foot peaks in South America. And then by 1997, we found ourselves heading into Asia, which is where the Himalaya are. So we had spent about 10 years just slowly progressing, and we found ourselves on Broad Peak. And that's one of the 14 8,000 meter peaks. There's 14 8,000 meter peaks, 8,000 meters being about 26,300 feet. There's 14 of those, and that's kind of the benchmark for high altitude climbing, where high altitude mountaineers go for the highest peaks in the world. And we didn't take our skis on that trip. We were humble enough to realize, well, this is a pretty big deal, just climbing an 8,000 meter peak. So we didn't take the skis, but on that peak, the slopes were just magnificent. And my brother and I were just whispering back and forth, why didn't we bring the skis? We could do it. But we started to realize our gift through that process, that we had a knack for climbing at altitude. It was a gift. We had the physiology to excel at altitude. We would look around and other people were not doing so well, and we were having a great time. That trip literally cemented in our minds that we wanted to try and take skiing to the ultimate level, which was the 8,000 meter arena. And only a dozen people had ever skied from those altitudes. But in the process of developing these gifts, finding these gifts and developing them, we gained a little bit of notoriety. And that kind of pumped up our egos. And we were just young. And people started to notice us. So we decided that we were going to go and climb and ski a peak in Tibet called Shishapangma, which is just over 8,000 meters. And by and large, 99% of all the people supported us. But there was 1%. There's always that 1%. And for whatever reason, human beings are, I've heard the term, the quote, that human beings are designed to survive and not thrive. And that's an evolution thing that we can get into, but we concentrate on the negative. 1% of the voice was negative. They didn't think we could do it. That was right at the advent of the internet. There was only one adventure website, and some clown on the internet started really critiquing us, and he put a betting pool on the website that people could take bets on our demise. And this really kind of, it upset us. We were young. We didn't know how to handle it. So we started to fight back. 99% of the people are supporting us. Everybody thinks it's wonderful. Be safe, have fun. 1% starts putting a shadow of doubt in our minds. And instead of listening and soaking in the positive vibes from 99%, we concentrated on the 1%. And we started to develop a chip on our shoulder. Well, lo and behold, we go to that peak. Our intentions were just to ski on the peak. Well, we pulled it off. And it was a huge feather because it was the first time any American had ever skied from an 8,000 meter peak, North or South America. So we got back, and the limelight just started to flood on us. They did a film on us, and we were profiled in all the adventure magazines, Outside Magazine, National Geographic, all the ski magazines. Well, you can imagine for a young guy, 30 years old, that starts to impact your head, and it starts to really build up your ego. And the 1% of the naysayers started to critique even that success. Oh, they got lucky. They're one-hit wonders. And bluntly, it completely pissed us off. So we're developing ego, and we are developing an obsession to prove these people wrong. So we come up with this harebrained idea that we're going to go with a relatively small team. We don't use any oxygen. We don't use any Sherpa. We don't use any drugs. We decide then and there that we're going to go to try and climb and ski Mount Everest. So we put the expedition together. We knew it was going to take a few years. But by 2003, 3 years after we were successful on Shishapangma, we found ourselves at the base camp of the north side of Everest. And we weren't going to go to the south side because the north side was harder. We were stacking the cards in our favor, and we were just obsessed. I can remember just being so obsessed about proving people wrong. Well, you can probably guess the result of that expedition. We got caught in a storm, didn't get to the top, and when we came off that peak, we were just devastated. And for the first time in my life, I could understand how Dad could be an Olympian and think my entire ski racing career was a complete waste of talent. We felt like failures. We felt defeated. It was a horrible, horrible ride home. And in that discouraged state of mind, we failed to realize, number one, we attempted Everest pure style, which is a monumental task. But at that time, because so few people were skiing from those altitudes, we failed to realize that we did climb to 25,500 feet, and we skied the North Ridge of Everest. And it was only the second time that it had ever been done, and it was the first time an American had ever done it. We were so devastated because we didn't get the medal, we didn't hit the summit, that it just destroyed us. And we didn't realize the accomplishment. I mean, and back then in 2003, if anybody would have skied from 25,500 feet on any peak other than the face of Everest, it would have been headline news. It took us 6 months to realize what we had accomplished.